You shouldn't hate yourself, or a part of yourself. That's what's holding you back and making you more kid than Omega. There's part of your mind that you've never let me see, that you've never let anyone see. What's locked in there? Today on the Comic Book Report, X-Force by Benjamin Percy, Volume 2, Hardcover. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm back with more from Marvel's Merry Band of Mutants, this time looking at the X-Force team during the Benjamin Percy Krakoa era run. I did review the first hardcover collection of this X-Force run some time ago on the channel, and I cannot wait to talk about Volume 2. This was one of my favorite titles of this X-Men and Greater X-Book era, so let's go ahead and dive in. First though, let's go ahead and shout out the channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. There's a link for it in this video's description, and if you see anything there you like, you can actually use my discount code at checkout, The Comic Book Report, to receive $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support the channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's go ahead and get started with today's comic review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Benjamin Percy and penciled primarily by Joshua Cassara, Robert Gill, and more. The comics in this volume were published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2020. The volume itself collects X-Force, the 2019 series, issues 15 through 26, and Wolverine, the 2020 series, issue 13. And finally, this is an oversized hardcover edition with glossy print paper stock, a sewn binding, and a total of 352 pages. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at that oversized hardcover from Marvel Comics, and right from the jump, I just love the uniformity of these collections. I've been saying it since I've reviewed all kind of the Dawn of X hardcover editions that I've had, like Marauders and Excalibur, Wolverine, and so forth, but I just love it. I love the design aesthetic. We have X-Force here with kind of a burnt orange color. We have Kid Omega on the front of this. I love that character. Really fun stuff. There's the spine. Like I said, I reviewed Volume 1 already on the channel, but suffice it to say, this is very uniform, so it looks absolutely excellent on the bookcase. We have the Marvel logo, X-Force, some of the last names of the creators, and a nice Volume 1 there. Like I said, these oversized hardcover editions all have a very uniform format as far as the graphical design, but each series takes its own color. On the back, we have more of that same orange color. We have description about the book, what it contains, who wrote it. We have some Krakoan language there, and then some pricing information. Again, a real minimalist style here, but very uniform. I wish there was a little more bells and whistles with the back covers of these collections, but overall, still really strong, really striking, and definitely punches out with all that color. Okay, and now I'd like to go ahead and spend one more minute examining the exteriors of this book. I'll start by doing the full dust jacket. This time we'll also look at those interior flaps for the collection, and then I'll go ahead and spread everything out so you can see it at a glance. I try to do these with my hardcover reviews just so you can see everything that the collection has to offer. I will say in the case of these Krakoa era oversized hardcovers, again, it's a little bit more minimalist design. We don't have a ton of art outside the front cover of the dust jacket, but it still looks really sleek and I like to show it off. As far as what's printed on the hardback book itself, we just kind of have the stylized X-Force logo sort of stamped across it in different ways. Nothing too remarkable here. Like I said, it's very similar to what we've seen from the other oversized hardcovers in this line, but again, still worth showcasing. We have more of that incredible kind of burnt orange color, and again, I'm a fan of the uniformity, and frankly, I just wish we had the entire Krakoa era collected in these hardcover editions. I think they're so beautiful. Okay, and now we can go ahead and transition to the binding for this oversized hardcover. I mentioned it earlier in the video. I believe it is sewn binding. There might be a little glue in here as well. It's a little hard for me to tell, but I had no issues with the binding. You know, the pages didn't lay as flat as maybe they could have, so we do have a little bit of gutter loss, but overall, nothing really to complain about too much on my end. Okay, now that we've looked at the build of the book, we can go ahead and jump into the collection proper. Opening the book up, we have some black end pages, followed by a title page, kind of the creative breakdown page, the publication information, another kind of blank X-Force looking page, and then we jump right into the action. We have a little bit of what looks like a prologue, and then we have kind of that chapter number, issue 15, and we jump right in. So this collection essentially starts with a psychic interrogation of Colossus because things seem a bit amiss with that character. So we have some fun kind of action, inciting incidences at the beginning of the collection, and we're just jumping right in. So as I said, this is the volume 2 of these oversized hardcover editions. I believe this picks up at around volume 3 if you're collecting the trade paperbacks, if I'm not mistaken. But this is a really fun era for this book. If you're unaware, Benjamin Percy was writing both the Wolverine ongoing title through Krakoa as well as this X-Force title. I really like his approach to both books from what I've read. He's definitely a little bit grittier, darker, edgier. X-Force in general is kind of the black ops and more lethal force inducing kind of missions for an X team, and this one in particular is really dark in my mind. It's led by the Beast, who is himself on kind of a journey into darkness, or at least that's what it feels like. We have characters like Sage, Wolverine, Kid Omega, just to name a few. We also have Jean Grey, though she begins to leave the roster in this book, and we have some other changes that happen throughout this book as well with the characters. One of the more notable inclusions or kind of shakeups in my mind is Omega Red. His inclusion in this volume and actually the subsequent volume is really just interesting to see what they do with that character. He's definitely a bit rogue, I'll say. He's definitely a bit kind of edgy, and he's been a long-time villain for the X-Men, so seeing how they incorporate him in the team or not is definitely a fascinating facet of this run. But there's a bit more of that in volume 3, but we still again have some fun appearances here in volume 2. I think for me the most striking character move throughout this entire volume, the 12 issues or so that are included here, 12, 13, are really how they treat Kid Omega. Now this is a character that I believe was introduced during Grant Morrison's new X-Men run, and honestly this character is a fan favorite for me. He's definitely one of my favorite mutant characters, but I've actually enjoyed his appearances in subsequent work even more than I did during the Morrison run. Like, I know he was featured in Wolverine and the X-Men by Jason Aaron, for example, and I really like how he was used in that series, and then I've come to really like seeing him on this X-Force team with Wolverine and the others. I think for me they've really tried to elevate him, especially in this volume, into a more super heroic kind of leading man kind of figure. I wouldn't go so far as to say he's a team lead, but he's really begun to hold his own and mature. He's even kind of holding down a serious relationship with one of the Stepford Cuckoos, and it's a really sweet relationship, and I really like how they just work together. I really enjoy it. They're both definitely psychic-based characters, so we get kind of interior life in their minds and also vocally, and we get to see their relationship kind of bloom and flourish throughout this collection. We also have Kid Omega dealing with some of his greatest fears, anxieties, and battling really manifestations of the darkest portions of his nature. We have some implications that he is also augmenting himself every time he is reborn. We have him kind of dealing with the legacy of what happens to him every mission when he does not live, and we actually have one of the first villains in this part of the volume. It's actually kind of an evil version or portion of Kid Omega, so that was really fun, and I think pairing Kid Omega and the rest of X-Force against this kind of darker edged presence or version of Kid Omega was a really good use of character in this volume. Like I said, we're already exploring this character so much, and to face kind of a darker shadow version of him, I just think was a real masterstroke here. Another story that began earlier in this collection, might even be before that King Omega story, honestly, is we have this whole run with an undersea kind of creature or presence. I know there's like a giant octopus at one point, but it's fun seeing X-Force tasked with going scuba, going under the water to fend off this attack. We even have a notable cameo by one of my favorite mutant characters, Namor the Submariner. That whole run was also a blast, and again, a real highlight for this collection for me. Another character that's included in the X-Force run here that I really like how they utilized her in the first volume, and I've liked her so far throughout, is the character of Domino. This mutant is always known for being lucky, but after she was heavily experimented on in volume 1, she's just a little bit less than what she normally is, and we have to deal with these ramifications of knowing as an audience what happened to her in the previous volume without the character really having a grasp on what went down, and that's really complicated and interesting as well. And I like at the helm of this team, like I said, we have Beast and then we have Sage as kind of the Oracle, sort of eye in the sky, computer whiz, doing some logistical stuff for the team, but we get to see kind of the darker edges of, again, the character of Beast and how Sage navigates that and how the team is being led and where is this even really going and are they still doing noble missions, and all of these things come into play and are starting to be spoken about throughout this volume, and I really like it. I think that there's a gradual descending with this team. Not that they were ever sparkly and clean to begin with, but we definitely get to see darker edges and maturity as the storytelling Percy is presenting is beginning to unfold. Another big section of this book that I liked is when we got into the Hellfire Gala tie-ins. That event for me was not maybe my favorite portion of this Krakoa era, though I did review the first hardcover collection for that. But these tie-ins were really fun. Essentially, X-Force plays security force with this, and this is actually where we have the Wolverine issue that ties into this overall story arc with X-Force and Hellfire Gala as a whole. And this is a really fun, like 1 to 2 part little mini side adventure during the Hellfire Gala where we have an outbreak of sort of this bioterrorist weapon that kind of makes people these plant creatures. It's all really intense, and it's kind of happening at the side of the Hellfire Gala. So we have X-Force deployed to take control of the situation and try to handle it. We have a notable cameo by another favorite of mine, Deadpool, which was a ton of fun. I think I read these issues initially in the Hellfire Gala hardcover, but getting it in scope and in context of this X-Force run and the team in general, I found myself noticing other details or character moments I maybe passed over the first time. So that was really fun as well, and I think it really livened up this collection in general. I think overall, this collection doesn't have one gigantic story arc. It maybe feeds an overarching storyline, but I really feel like this book, even across the 13 issues or so, give or take, it really has a collection of smaller stories where I feel like we had maybe 4 or 5 distinct storylines that were just 2 to 3 issues each, and I really like that because I feel for a collection that is oversized but maybe not omnibus in length, we still got a lot of great stories. So even if you didn't like the more Kid Omega centric story, you have this great one with the Hellfire Gala, or this great undersea adventure, or this other great kind of plant, what's going on with Krakoa kind of story, and I just really like that. I think overall this was a huge bang for your buck, and I think it really just continued the Krakoa era mythos nicely. Reading volume 2, even if I didn't like it maybe quite as much as volume 1 in some ways, I do think it successfully continues a really great run by Percy. I will say this and Wolverine are the first works I've read from this writer, but after reading them, I'm actively looking for more titles from this creator. I should also say I read his work on Predator vs. Wolverine, that miniseries. Absolutely loved that as well. But yeah, just a terrific book here. I have no real complaints. We do have some of the run's artists coming back for this volume, like Joshua Cassara, to name a few, and I still think we have a great visual style. What I love about the artwork we have here throughout X-Force as well is it doesn't look quite as animated to me as some of the other Krakoa era books, and there's nothing wrong with that kind of animation animation, but I feel like even though it is polished and kind of rounded in some ways, you still get that kind of visceral, action-packed blockbuster feel to the art that I just really enjoy. The coloring as well just pops right off the page. It's such a visual treat for the eyes, and even though we have a couple different artists on this book, there is kind of a visual fidelity across the whole run, and I just really dig that. Throughout this book as well, if you're unfamiliar with this Krakoa era situation, we do have these kind of interstitial sort of exposition dump pages. They can be like journal entries or kind of data or different little scientific notes sometimes, and they're kind of spliced throughout the issues. And again, they're kind of like information dumps. They're exposition points that are used. I think Jonathan Hickman first came up with this during the House of X Powers of 10 maxi series, and that was really the template for this whole Krakoa era. So most of these titles, if not all, reproduce that to some end, and I do think X-Force maybe does it a little more than others because this team is running so many logistical and kind of clandestine kinds of meetings. So it is interesting to see those throughout. I know some people think that those break the flow of the narrative. I, for one, think they are a good supplement to what we're already seeing visually with some of the art, but it can be a bit monotonous here and there. But overall, I think it was used effectively, and I actually think more so in X-Force than some of the other X-book titles around this time. If I were to compare this to other Krakoa era series, in case you're kind of just still getting into this era and want to know some recommendations, like I said, I've reviewed a handful of them on the channel. I think some of my favorite are the Hickman X-Men run. I really enjoyed this book here, X-Force, Wolverine, Hellions, to a lesser extent, but still quite good. I did enjoy Marauders, and then Excalibur was maybe not my favorite, but still really fun to collect and enjoy. And then there's a handful I still haven't read myself, but I really love this grand experiment for the Krakoa era. I know we are now out of it as a Marvel fan base. I'm still kind of catching up to some of it. If you are reading the current X-Men books, though, I'd love some feedback on them in the comments below. Please as spoiler-free as possible. As far as when you can read this book, again, the Krakoa era is kind of funny with how it's mapped because so many of the titles kind of cross-pollinate with each other. I would say, bare minimum, you should read House of X Powers of 10, which set up the status quo for all the mutant books for the Krakoa era. And then after that, I think if you read the first X-Force volume, you can probably jump right into this. Will you be missing some things? Yes, of course, but I think that those are really the only prerequisites to enjoy this title. Again, those are House of X Powers of 10 and the X-Force Volume 1 hardcover from Benjamin Percy, or if you're going paperbacks, I would do the Volume 1 and 2 of the Benjamin Percy X-Force run. I will say again, he did write Wolverine in tandem with this, so reading the Wolverine ongoing series, there is some fun crossover as well with what Wolverine's dealing with, and you can kind of bring some of that into how you interpret his character in this story, for example, and I do like that. I like that a lot, and I think that Percy does a good job of separating those two titles while also making them kind of relatable and all kind of gelling together at the same time. I think that the first book was really an establishment of the team and maybe an exploration of Domino. I would say this Volume 2 is a real standout book for the character of Kid Omega, as I mentioned earlier in the video. Overall, though, a satisfying Volume 2 and an already pretty fantastic run, at least in my opinion. And yeah, I mean, just looking at all of this, the artwork really doesn't quit. As we make our way toward the back of the collection, we do have a handful of extras, as we do with a lot of the other oversized hardcover editions in this line. The first thing is really a cover art gallery. We do have the covers as kind of a chapter break for each of the issues throughout this book, but they are overlaid with that kind of burnt orange color they used for the rest of this book. So it's nice at the back of the collection we get to see kind of the unaltered virgin covers for each of the issues. Along with that, we get to see a good handful of the variant covers, and we get to see some kind of sketches, behind the scenes drawings, things like that. Not an overwhelming amount of extras, but a good sampling, especially for the cover art gallery, and I think it was a really nice addition to the back end of this collection. And as we finish out the book here, that's really all I have to say about the X-Force by Benjamin Percy, oversized hardcover Volume 2. And now I think all that's left to do is to give this collection a grade. For more outstanding artwork and some really captivating storylines, the Comic Book Report is happy to give X-Force by Benjamin Percy, Volume 2 hardcover a B. This is still definitely an above average collection in my mind. I'm not sure if it packed as much of a punch as the Volume 1 did, at least in my mind. I think that we got to see a lot of great character developing moments, but I don't feel like it overall really pushed the greater narratives forward, maybe to the degree I liked. I still think this is one of the premier titles coming out of the Krakoa era, and I definitely want to continue with this run. I do think it's really quite strong, along with Benjamin Percy's Wolverine run, and I have no serious complaints here. If you're looking for a darker edge in the Krakoa era universe, I highly recommend this run on X-Force. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Did I miss out? Is there things about this run you like, want to discuss? I'd love to hear all of that below, or really any general X-Men chat. Really dig it. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, comment, and maybe share this video with a friend. Thanks so much. Have a good one.